This story is called The Shadow, and it was submitted by Susan. When I was 16 years old, my family and I moved from Seattle to Vancouver, Washington. The new city was so much different than what I was used to. My grandparents owned a great deal of farming land in the area. My grandparents gave each one of their children a piece of land that they purchased as a gift to build their family on. The land was lovely, flat, grassy earth. I loved how big the 1-acre lot was. My father was the main reason for our move to the area. He owned an automotive shop in Seattle, and then purchased the land in downtown Vancouver. And then he built a new business to run by our new home. In simpler terms, we moved and started the same business where we live now. My dad had had 35 years of auto mechanic experience. If your car or truck needed any fixing, Hal Prothero was your man. At first, getting used to Vancouver was pretty difficult for me. The house we were in now was in a much more rural place than what we were used to. Our neighbors were at least 50 to 100 yards away from us, so if anything bad happened, it would be pretty hard to hear someone scream. I had 2 sisters younger than myself. My aunt and grandparents were actually our closest neighbors in proximity, so that was nice having family nearby. We eventually got to know the neighbors we had. They shared their stories, and we along shared ours. My parents kept hearing a story about a troubled young man that lived about a mile down the street. One stormy and warm night, the whole family had just gone to bed. I decided to leave my window cracked to cool down. The curtains blowing in the wind woke me up suddenly around 2 a.m. I got up in my sleep-filled slumber, slid the window closed, and locked it. There was a full moon which lit up my bedroom. I was almost ready to drift back to sleep when I had a strange feeling. I opened my dry, tired, and crusty eyes to see an enormous shadow of a man on my bedroom wall. I was frozen with fear and terrified out of my young mind. Who was this man, and why the hell was he outside my window? Better yet, why was a stranger in our yard at 2 a.m.? Finally, I screamed, and my dad came tearing into my room. I explained, but by then the shadow on the wall had vanished. Over the summer, this happened at least 2 more times. I got so scared I left my bedroom door open and was afraid to fall asleep for fear of the returning evil shadow. By now, my parents had spoke to the local sheriff. The sheriff told them that this had happened numerous times in the past. They did say they suspected the same young man I had heard stories about. One night there was a knock on my window in the dead of night. He was moving closer and closer to our home with each occurrence. I couldn't help but wonder what the next step would be. By the time my dad had ran outside, of course, the predator was long gone. Summer turned to fall, and one night I was pulling an all-nighter preparing for a big exam. My family decided to go to our grandparents' house for a nice family dinner, and I decided to stay home and study. I grew hungry as the night went on, so I made some chicken noodle soup and some crackers, and then I returned to burn the midnight oil. I was at the kitchen sink washing my dishes some time later, and my eyes were drawn out to our large driveway, only to see this person once more. I could see him staring and watching my every move. I slowly removed myself from the window and out of view. I immediately called my grandparents' house to reach my father. My grandfather grabbed his 12-gauge shotgun and ran up to the house with my dad. They saw the dark figure run off into the night. We all now knew we had a sociopath on our hands. Needless to say, at this point I was becoming a total basket case. Nothing happened for the next whole month. I figured, thank God he has given up. Until one last time I woke to the largest shadow on my wall yet. Dad was now keeping his Colt 45 out at night. He bolted outside and ran through the crunchy frost in the lawn in hot pursuit of this demon in the night. I saw him running, and Dad fired his gun in the air and screamed, "You come back, I will fucking kill you. Do you hear me, God damn it? You're dead." This piece of filth never stepped back on our property ever again. Years later, I was married and had my own family. My husband and son and I were visiting my parents one afternoon. My dad walked into the living room with a cutout newspaper article. The article read as follows: James Smith was sentenced to aggravated rape and murder, and that he was spending his life in prison. Thank God he never got my life. Thanks for listening, guys. Sinful Savant here. Just want to thank you guys for listening to the story. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and share the video. And I also want to thank Susan for submitting her story tonight. It was a great one. I'm glad you made it out all right and nothing happened to you or your family. So, guys, make sure to keep submitting your stories for future videos. Just email me in the info box below. Thanks, guys, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great night.